Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. You guys know what time it is. Time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And for those of you who like these type of videos, please remember to click like down below to offset those dislikes. But I came across a video in my feed of particular interest to me by none other than OmarIsuf, the shaman philosopher of YouTube fitness, where he was talking about fat loss tips for power lifters and strength athletes. Now, I thought he's got some interesting stuff there, but what I don't like is that he didn't differentiate between how fat you are. Okay, because I'm someone who has a power lifter. You guys saw me do cut 40 pounds of body weight last year. Then I pretty much stayed within a few pounds and just recomped since then. And I'm someone who's talked to a lot of coaches. I know a lot of lifters. I've looked at what the dietary approaches are for stuff like this for a lot of people who are world-class level power lifters and strength athletes, and some of it's going to kind of disagree there. Now, what I will say to a lot of people out there, Omar said, hey, I consider a lot of guys should just do a nice slow cut. And he talked about a pound a week. A pound a week for a lifter is not a slow cut, though. And that's the thing that he noticed, is that he did 7 pounds in 3 weeks, right? And he saw a strength loss in week 3, a measurable strength loss. Okay, that's not what we're shooting for. That's kind of unacceptable for a strength athlete. And I think that's a point that needs to be highlighted there. Because again, he talked about working with Eric Helms and stuff, and I don't have a whole lot of respect for Eric at this point. I'll just be honest. I just don't consider Eric to be that great of a source of information, other than to point out that bodybuilding is terrible for your blood work based upon his research. That bodybuilding, even natural bodybuilding, is a death cult. That's about the only thing useful that Eric brings to the table. But his work does show that. His doctoral work showed that natural bodybuilding, it will hurt you. It's detrimental to your health. So we have all of that, but then, he's saying, taking, 2 or 3 weeks and then a week off, and that's fine, but here's the recommendations I would make. I'm going to say that the recommendations that Omar has are perfectly fine for a power lifter who's above 20% body fat, right? Which is a lot of you guys out there. Because we have to be honest here. At what point are the most powerlifters competitive? All right, you guys know where we're going to go with this. Guys who are using gear under 10% body fat, that's your best powerlifters. Okay, that's reality. Guys on gear, the sub 10% powerlifters are the ones breaking the records. That's a fact. You got to be peeled. Everyone else, guys who either use very modest amounts or guys who aren't using anything really at all, usually somewhere in about that 10 to 15, maybe up to 16% body fat range. That's your sweet spot. In other words, to be the best at a meet, a power lifter needs to be the shortest, leanest guy in his class usually, right? That's usually the guy who wins. If everyone else in your weight class is 5'8", at 14% body fat, and you show up at 5'7", 11% body fat, you're walking out of that class with a gold. Okay, it's that simple. That's what's going to happen 9 out of 10 times. So the worst thing you can do is be the tallest guy in your weight class. And you sure don't want to be the fattest guy in your weight class. Because body composition matters. Size equals strength. And then the height matters. So if we're talking about strength athletes, yeah, guys are going to have to get leaner. But you can't sacrifice performance for it. Let's come over to the other point. He talks about what works for you. Well, the problem is that most power lifters, if we get weaker, we see a decline in strength, we panic. You want to send a power lifter who has a previous history of being at a higher body fat, you want to send them into a binge eating fest, have them walk in and lose 20 pounds on their bench press, lose 30 pounds on their squat. All right, you're going to send a power lifter who's cutting back into a spiral of binge eating, pretty large percentage of the time. So we're not talking about novice lifters here. He's talking about specifically strength athletes. I'm going to say the strength athletes don't do rapid changes at all, ever. Once you are below 20% body fat as a power lifter, don't worry about things like bulking and cutting anymore. If you do, they need to be very slow cuts, and I don't mean a pound a week. I'm talking, you don't lose more than 5 pounds of body weight in an entire phase. You don't gain more than 5 pounds of body fat in an entire phase. Your goal is a power lifter who is sub 20% body fat, who knows roughly what weight class he wants to be in. You either slow cut or recomp in your class, or after a recomp, you lean bulk into the next class. So what do you mean? Well, let's say you're 8 pounds under the minimum for the next weight class you want to go into. You spend an entire year lean bulking into that class. And then once you're in that class, you recomp or you just fluctuate. Keep yourself within a 5 pound window on your weight. If you need to gain a little more, fine. Slowly bulk up and gain a couple of pounds, 2-3 pounds. Then trim 2 or 3 pounds off. Fluctuate in that window. Recomposition, tight diet, always focused on making progress. Okay, that honestly works a lot better for powerlifters, a powerlifting mentality, because we need to always be moving forward. And that's usually what I'm going to advise. And I'm not saying Omar's advice is bad. I think that Omar's advice is best for powerlifters who are over 20% body fat. That's where that advice needs to go. But once you guys have reached that sweeter spot to where you're under about 20% body fat, you need to start thinking in terms of clean bulks and recomps. And when we start talking about cuts, it needs to be, you're only thinking in terms of a few pounds. Like, that's more advanced powerlifters. That is a powerlifter cut. People forget that. When they think cuts, they think of a bodybuilder, right? They cut 20 pounds of body weight. You shouldn't be doing that as a strength athlete unless you're fat. It needs to be in terms of, okay, if I want to get leaner, I need to drop a few pounds, right? Few pounds, say no more than 5 in any given phase, and then go back to making progress again. You wiggle it down, you adjust it over time until you dial into the weight class where you need to be, and then again go from there. Because the thing is, people say, well, what if you end up being square in the middle? What if you've recomped or whatever, now you're 210 and you want to stay in the 220 class? Well, that's great. That means you can lean bulk all the way in your meat prep. In other words, that's a great spot to be. It's a great spot to be. If you're near the top end of a weight class, you just recomp. Spend all your time recomping in that weight class. And if you're in the middle of the weight class, if you are 10 pounds under the limit for your weight class, that means you can spend an entire meat prep clean bulking. It means you can put on 6 or 7 pounds over the course of 12 weeks going into a comp. You're in a slow weight gain phase the entire time. That's perfect. You're going to come into that meat completely peaked at that point. And if you happen to drift over near the end, you can do a very small water cut. But that's what I find. I'm looking at more and more of a lot of coaches who prep a lot of top lifters, and I'm seeing more and more guys doing what we're seeing right there. It's a very effective strategy. It's a very, very effective strategy to do it that way, to where you're either lean bulking, very slow lean bulking going into things, or you're recompositioning, or you do little micro cuts. Just drop a couple pounds. If you need to get leaner, drop a couple pounds and then go back to maintenance and recomp for another 10 weeks. Right? If you need to adjust, make a couple pound adjustments. And that way you never have to make rapid changes, because even a pound a week is a lot. I mean, as a power lifter, if you drop 10 full pounds of body weight over any period of time, that is going to impact your performance. It's going to impact your performance. And even Omar found a 7 pound weight loss resulted in an immediate loss in performance. All right, that's not ever what we're shooting for. I know people say, but if you don't have a meet, it doesn't matter. It does matter, because it is about the mentality. An athlete, a strength athlete, we should be focused on always making some progress somewhere, no matter how slow it is. We need to always be improving. Right? We need to always see a performance improvement on something, whether it's an accessory movement, a close variation, a main lift, a classic lift. We want to always be improving, and that means you don't want to ever see rapid changes in body weight in any direction. And we do have to pay attention to our body composition. That is the direction strength sports have gone. They've become very competitive again. The fat powerlifters have been out for a while. That's not really a thing, other than a few really fat guys in classes that less than 5% of people compete in. All right, fat powerlifting is out. Most people stay at athletic body fats. And if you want to be a real power lifter, that's kind of the direction you go. But again, that's just my take on it, and that's my take observing different coaches, people who work with different people, and I've seen more and more good coaches who actually don't have people even do big water cuts, or like be within 5 pounds. Might be within 5 pounds of your weight class. That way you can clean bulk if you need to near the end if you're low, or you can do a very mild water cut without an aggressive refeed when you get to comp, because even the aggressive refeeds of the sugars can pull water away from your muscles. It can interfere with performance if something goes wrong. No, that's my take on it. When we're talking about powerlifters, we have to have a context of how fat are you and where are you at relative to your weight class, because your weight class is everything. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.